story of Fuzzypeg the Hedgehog. Of course, you must understand that Grey Rabbit's home had no electric light or gas, and even the candles were made from pith of rushes dipped in wax from the wild bees' nests which Squirrel found. Water there was in plenty, but it did not come from a tap. It flowed from a spring outside, which rose up from the ground and went to a brook. Grey Rabbit cooked on a fire, but it was a wood fire. There was no coal in that part of the country. Tea did not come from India, but from a little herb known very well to country people, who once dried it and used it in their cottage homes. Bread was baked from wheat ears, ground fine, and Hare and Grey Rabbit gleaned in the cornfields to get the wheat. The doormats were plaited rushes, like country-made mats, and cushions were stuffed with wool gathered from the hedges where sheep pushed through the thorns. As for the looking-glass, Grey Rabbit found the glass dropped from a lady's handbag, and Mole made a frame for it. Usually the animals gazed at themselves in the still pools, as so many country children have done. The country ways of Grey Rabbit were the country ways known to the author. Early one summer morning, when the white mist lay over the fields like a soft blanket, old Milkman Hedgehog uncurled himself and rolled out of bed. "Don't wake Fuzzypeg," called Mrs. Hedgehog, as he struggled with a sheet that was all mixed up with his prickles. He stooped over Fuzzypeg, who lay curled up in bed, a small ball of spikes. "He'll be a grand fellow when he's grown up," he said to his wife. Hedgehog went downstairs with his prickles lowered, lest they should brush the whitewash off the ceiling, and walked into the kitchen. Mrs. Hedgehog polished him up with a duster and gave him a clean brown handkerchief. He opened the door and took down from a branch a small wooden yoke, which he slung across his shoulders. From it he hung 2 little wooden pails. Then he started off to get the milk. "Don't be late," called Mrs. Hedgehog. "Breakfast is at 6 o'clock today. It is Fuzzypeg's birthday." He walked through the meadow and under the 5-barred gate. Out of the whiteness appeared a herd of cows. "Coo up," called Hedgehog, and a cow raised her head and watched him unhook his pails. "Lie down," he commanded, and she obediently lay down. Hedgehog milked steadily until the little pails were frothing over. He politely thanked the cow and set off to the house where little Grey Rabbit lived with her friends Hare and Squirrel. "You're early, Hedgehog," said Grey Rabbit as she opened the door. "Yes, Grey Rabbit, it is my little Fuzzypeg's birthday," cried Hedgehog. "He is a year old, half grown up." "Wait a minute, and I will send him a present." She disappeared inside and came back with a hen's egg. "It's a boiled egg," she said. "Fuzzypeg can play ball with it." Hedgehog thanked her and carried on to Mouldy Warp the mole's house. Mouldy Warp gave him another present for Fuzzypeg. "It's a scrambled egg," he said. "I had to scramble under a haystack to find it." Hedgehog walked across the field to an old black house where Rat lived. He felt slightly nervous at Rat's house, although Rat seemed a friendly fellow. "Here's the milk," said Hedgehog quickly. "You're in a hurry," said Rat. "It's my Fuzzypeg's birthday." "Well, I will send him a present," said Rat. He ran to his cupboard and took out an egg. "It's a poached egg," he said. I poached it from the hen house." Next, Hedgehog set off for Red Squirrel's house, where he received another present for Fuzzypeg. "It's an old laid egg," said Red Squirrel, "the same age as Fuzzypeg." "How kind everyone is," thought Hedgehog as he hurried home. Fuzzypeg was sitting on a little chair waiting for his bread and milk when Hedgehog arrived. He had the scrambled egg for breakfast and divided the poached egg between his father and mother. After breakfast, Hedgehog and Fuzzypeg went out to play rolling. They climbed a hill with the old laid egg and the boiled egg, and they all rolled down to the bottom. Bumpety-bump went Fuzzypeg. Bumpety-bump went the boiled egg. Squishety-squash went the old laid egg. Such a smell came from the broken egg. Hedgehog and Fuzzypeg took to their heels and ran all the way home. When evening came, Hedgehog gave Fuzzypeg his present. He opened it with trembling paws to find a little white cage. Inside were two small creatures that sent out a beautiful soft light, so the cage was like a fairy lantern in the twilight.
"What are they?"
asked Fuzzypeg. "Glowworms," replied Hedgehog. "Two tame glowworms. Feed them and treat them kindly, and then you can let them loose in the hedge garden." One day, soon after, Fuzzypeg and Hedgehog were strolling near the farm when suddenly the hens began to cry and hiss and scream. All of the hens rushed to the shelter of the farm, all except Speckledy Hen, who was too frightened to move. She stood, staring at an adder which glided nearer and nearer. Hedgehog sprang at the adder's tail, holding it tight. The adder tried to bite him over and over again, but Hedgehog never let go until the adder lay dead. "This month since I tasted adder pie," he said, as he slung the adder across his back, and went home with the admiring Fuzzypeg. After a fine dinner of adder pie, Fuzzypeg ran out to play with his cousins, Tim and Bill Hedgehog.
"My father killed an adder," he said. "He held his tail till it was dead."
"That's nothing," said Bill scornfully. "My father pounced on a lion's tail and held it till it was dead." Fuzzypeg walked home with a heavy heart.
"Mother," he said, "could my father pounce on a lion and hold its tail till it was dead?"
"Of course he could," replied Mrs. Hedgehog, looking up from her sewing.
"He could fight an elephant, I expect,"
thought Fuzzypeg. The next day, Mrs. Hedgehog made a hayseed cake. "Take this to Speckledy Hen," she said to Fuzzypeg. "Do not dawdle on the way home. Walk on the little green path, not on the broad white road. There are dangers about. Weasels, stoats, snakes, and worse."
"What do I do if I meet a danger?"
asked Fuzzypeg. "Roll up in a ball and keep your face hidden."
"Suppose I meet a lion?"
"You won't meet a lion," she laughed. Fuzzypeg trotted through the fields until he met Speckledy Hen.
"Mother sent you a hayseed cake," he said.
"How sweet it smells," said the hen. "Now come with me, and I will show you where the finest acorns fall."
By the time Fuzzypeg started home, it was getting late. He hadn't gone far when he saw Hare sitting on a grassy bank. "Stop and play a minute," said Hare. Fuzzypeg stopped a minute, and a minute more, while Hare tried to explain noughts and crosses to him. At last, Fuzzypeg hurried home, thinking of his supper. Suddenly, he saw a big, white, curly-haired animal. It sprang towards him.
"A lion!"
he thought, and rolled into a ball. "Woof, woof!" roared the lion. "Good dog," said a voice. Fuzzypeg was picked up and carried away.
"You let me go," he squeaked. "My father once killed a lion."
He was put down on a path in a garden, where he uncurled and bolted for the gate. But he was not quick enough, for an enormous flower pot was placed on top of him. "I will bring you some bread and milk," said the voice. Then it went away, and Fuzzypeg was alone in the dark. When no little hedgehog came home, old Hedgehog went to look for him. He found a piece of paper covered with noughts and crosses. A little further on, he found a bundle of acorns tied in a tiny handkerchief and a pair of red shoes. He was in despair as he set off for Grey Rabbit's house. He knocked at the door and Squirrel answered. "No milk tonight, thank you," she said, shutting the door. "Oh, please, ma'am, it's my little Fuzzypeg. He's lost." "Does anyone know where Fuzzypeg is?" Squirrel called into the house. Little Grey Rabbit and Hare came running. "I've seen him," said Hare. "We had a game of noughts and crosses." Hedgehog took the paper from his pocket. "Yes, that's it," said Hare. "What happened then?" asked Hedgehog. "He ran on, and I ran the other way."
"I am so sorry, Hedgehog," said Grey Rabbit. "I think you should ask Wise Owl for help."
"Oh, no," said Hedgehog. "He might be hungry."
"If you wave a white handkerchief for a truce, you will be safe."
Little Grey Rabbit tied a handkerchief to his prickles, and he set off into the wood. Hedgehog reached Wise Owl's oak tree and rang the silvery bell. "What do you want?" called Owl. "I've lost my Fuzzypeg, and Grey Rabbit thought you could find him." Wise Owl was flattered. "Perhaps I can, but you must bring me a quill for a pen, a can of milk, and a new-laid egg. Bring them at dawn, and you shall have news of your son." Wise Owl flew over the fields looking for Fuzzypeg, but couldn't see him anywhere. "Stoat, have you seen little Hedgehog?" he asked a shifty-eyed fellow creeping along the hedges. "No, sir," said Stoat. "I wish I had seen him," he muttered when Owl had flown away. "Yard dog, have you seen little Hedgehog?" Owl asked a curly white dog sitting outside a kennel. "Yes," said the dog, "but I shall tell you nothing about him. I belong to the house, and you belong to the wood." "He must be near," thought Owl. As he flew slowly over the garden, he heard a soft sobbing sound coming from a large flower pot. He flew down and looked through a hole in the top. "Is that you, little Hedgehog?" he asked.
"Yes, it's me,"
cried Fuzzypeg, trembling. "Help is coming," said Wise Owl, and flew away home. At dawn, Hedgehog came to Wise Owl's house with a can of milk, a goose quill for a pen, and a new-laid egg. "Put them down there, Hedgehog," said Owl. "Your son is safe under a flower-pot in the farmer's garden." Hedgehog thanked him and started home at a run, calling on his way for Little Grey Rabbit, Hare, Squirrel, and Mouldy Warp. Mrs. Hedgehog ran to the door when she heard the patter of little feet and joined them. They all ran through the fields, Hare and Little Grey Rabbit leading, Squirrel coming next, Hedgehog and Mrs. Hedgehog panting after, and Mouldy Warp far behind. They squeezed under the gate, except for Fat Hare, who had to climb the wall, and ran down the little path to the enormous plant pot. "Are you there, Fuzzypeg?" called old Hedgehog.
"Yes, Father. Are you?"
answered a small, faint voice.
"Yes, we are all here," said Hedgehog. "Squirrel, Hare, and Grey Rabbit, and Mouldy Warp is on the way."
He turned to the animals.
"All push, and over the plant pot must go."
So they pushed and they pushed, but the pot didn't move.
"All together, shove!"
called Hedgehog, but still the pot didn't move.
Just then, Rat strolled up. "What are you doing?" he asked.
"Fuzzypeg is under this plant pot," explained Hedgehog. "But you will never move that thing if Hare pushes one way and you all push the other. Now, heave!" shouted Rat. But the plant pot still didn't move. Then Mouldy Warp arrived. "This is the way," he said, and he began to dig. Earth flew up in a shower, and soon Mouldy Warp had disappeared down the tunnel. The animals waited. Then a tiny snout appeared, and little Fuzzypeg crawled up the tunnel to be hugged, prickles and all, by Hedgehog and his wife. A minute later came Mole, wiping his lips. "I stopped to finish his bread and milk," he explained. "It was a pity to waste 'em." He rammed the soil back down the tunnel, and the happy procession started home. "Come into the garden and have some refreshments," said Mrs. Hedgehog when they got back. There were egg sandwiches, acorns baked in their skins, rosehip jam, fresh blackberries and cream, mushrooms on toast, and crabapple cider. When Hare, Squirrel, and Little Grey Rabbit went home, they each took a small quill pen which the grateful Hedgehog had made for them. But Mouldy Warp wouldn't accept anything. He said that digging was more in his line than writing, and anyway, he already had everything he wanted in his castle under the 10-acre field.